And other than that, I'm going to introduce your wonderful moderator who knows about the title showrunner more than probably anyone in this room, the lovely Julie Plec.
Hello, good morning. Anyone is barely up at 10 o'clock after 4 days at this place, so I applaud all of you for joining us. I've got my smart girl glasses on so I can read my questions, and let's get started. We have with us a really awesome panel today of some currently working showrunners on new shows and hit shows, and I'm excited for you all to get to talk to them, and I'm excited to talk to them. Starting off with, sorry? Oh, she's trying to cue me. She's like, and Greg's first, okay. Starting off with Greg Garcia, who I personally love from My Name is Earl way back in the day, but has a new show coming on TBS. Sir, welcome. And we have next up, yeah. Oh no, it just takes me. Yeah. Next up we have Tracey Wigfield. Coming to us from Superior Donuts, we have Bob Daly. And from The Carmichael Show, Danielle Sanchez-Witzel. Oops. And last but not least, and I had to say, Javi gave me the phonetic spelling because I've been saying it wrong for 15 years. Javier Grillo-Marxuach. Welcome. Hi guys, welcome. So the question that always comes up in these panels early on is define showrunner, and I'm sure it's a question that we have always been asked individually, so I thought that it might be more fun to do like the lightning round, kind of like that game where you have to say the name of the movie and the name of the actor in the movie and then another movie that they're in, and you just keep going until you can't go anymore, until somebody messes up or freezes or panics.
Cool.
So starting with you and then circling around and around until we die or just want to put a bullet in our heads. Name one thing that defines what a showrunner does. And then we're just going to keep going. Somebody can clock it.
What if I mess up from the start? What if just right out of the gate I got
buzzer?
The first word that came to my mind, because my mentor, who is on the panel, and we'll discover who he is at some point in here, told me the showrunner is the general, that they're looking for the general. So I'll say it's the general. Perfect.
The showrunner is the only person in the room who knows what the show is and has to tell everybody what the show is so that they can do their job.
Good.
To me, when you graduate from being a writer to a showrunner, it's like going from being a babysitter to a parent. When you're a babysitter, you're kind of in charge of the kid, but you can go home at night and not worry about it. The showrunner is the person that stays up all night worrying about the kid.
And also a decision maker. Like when you're a writer, your job is making decisions all the time about the scene and the script and the jokes and whatever. But then, God, when you're a showrunner, people never stop asking you questions about what color should the cat be and is the hat big enough? And I don't care, but you have to.
I would say also the showrunner is the host of the party.
Good. Daily task. Pick one, anyone. Lightning round. We're going. We're continuing.
I think deciding what the writers are going to do for the day was my every night, like Bob saying. I would dream about it, think about it in the morning and when I was in the shower. So it's like a plan for the writers for the day.
Yeah, be in the more than anything else, it is be in the writers' room and tell the writers what the show is. And I'm going to hit that point over and over again because I think that it's very easy for people who become showrunners, and especially in this new age of television in which the apprenticeship ladder isn't as defined as it used to be, to think that it's about going into the editing room and finding the show, or it's whatever. And it literally is about training the 12 apostles, who are the other writer-producers, to go onto the land and tell everybody what the show is so that everybody else can do their job.
Ordering lunch is... But I worked with Greg Garcia, also my mentor, and Greg came up with the world's greatest innovation for ordering lunch, which is a carnival wheel with everybody's name on it. and we spin the wheel every morning, and whoever it lands on gets to pick lunch. And it's the greatest innovation in show running.
It saves about an hour's worth of discussion
Yes.
for sure.
Isn't that just deciding who's gonna get cussed out for the bad lunch? That really is just preemptively deciding who's gonna take the blame, right?
Fate is
there's
chosen.
Actually, but we do it on the Carmichael show too. Greg was my mentor,
I sell wheels as a side business, making a fortune.
In drama, we make you wait till the 11th episode to reveal that.
But the point is, because people do fight about it. So you can veto for $5, and there's a jackpot, and so you can hit that jackpot eventually. So that's how you drive it up. So everything is figured. I mean, there are so many rules. We had a handbook about how the wheel worked because there were so many rules about the wheel.
But it's a fantastic jolt of adrenaline first thing in the morning to get the day started. It's all downhill from there, unfortunately.
Last year was my first year running a show, and one of my jobs was I had to alone pick lunch every day, which is insane. And then this year I was like, this is my one innovation. It's like we're gonna go down the hierarchy and someone has to pick, but that wheel sounds much better. I would also say a job is like kind of running interference with like studio and network and pitching episodes to them and kind of making everything seem like everything's going okay, don't worry, you know.
Gosh, I would say stay positive and be decisive is the one and two things that I try to concentrate on. I mean, like Tracey was saying, you'll get like some people ask you questions all day long. That's all that happens is people ask you questions. And they've worked very hard on stuff, and they'll show you, like she said, they'll show you 5 hats, or which hat, you know. And then if you just sit, you know, it's easy. It doesn't matter. So you just pick absolutely that one right there.
Yeah.
That is the hat.
And that is
the hat. I don't even know why, but that's the hat.
It was such a lesson to learn too, because like your impulse when you're tired is to be like, I don't give a fuck. Like, who cares what hat? But it's like you have to care what hat because some person just spent 2 days picking out hats and printing out pictures for you and stuff. So exactly what Greg
and
says.
There's always and it makes people feel confident too, because there's a lot of people around. They're like, holy shit, he knows what hat.
I love that hat.
And then if you change your mind, you like quietly later you go, you know, I was wrong about the hat. Let's just do it.
By the way, totally. Like that. The beauty of this job is if you pick the wrong hat, you can actually go back and fix it later. You just have to figure out how to pay for it. Yeah. But yeah, so what these guys are saying is basically a showrunner defined as you're the boss, you're the general, you're the coach and the captain. You are the one that's leading. What did you say, Javi? Leading you're leading the apostles. Yeah. There isn't a single part of the job that isn't needed to be ordered by, managed by, approved by, or discussed by this group of people right here. So, you know, I love to talk about how absolutely god-awfully horrific the job can be. And I also, every now and then, like to remember that it's still aspirational to have this job, and so that we should also talk about what's great about it. So I'm going to target you, starting Bob. You seem like a nice guy, so why don't you tell everybody what's amazing about actually being a showrunner?
When you've kind of worked your way up, you know, because it takes generally, you know, 10, 12 years to sort of work your way up to being a showrunner. You get to see people make what you think is the wrong decision for 10, 12 years. And so it's great to be the person that gets to pick the hat. You know, as painful as it can be sometimes, it's wonderful to feel like, oh, my creative input is the one that people are listening to now. You know, you like I said, you spend your whole career building to that point. So, you know, it is hard, but it is easy to forget that like people care what hat I want. That's a nice feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult job and I'm sure it's much like, it's not like these jobs, but like you don't know what it is to be like a doctor until you're a doctor. It's certainly not as important as that. But like, you know, but at the end of the day, it's hard, but you are in charge of playing make-believe. Like you're in charge of a bunch of people playing make-believe and getting something done. And the thrill, too, of being able to take your own vision and be in charge and get it the way you want it to be. That doesn't happen in film. You know, in film, you write something and you hand it over, and then you usually just go see it at the movie theater, and you go, what did they do to this? I've recently done a theater thing, and it's like, and I hate it because it's like, oh, wait a second, I'm not in charge. I like being in charge. So I think that's one of the best things about being a showrunner is you can take your vision from the beginning to the end and sink or swim. It's what you want it to do. I
think for me it's all of that, but it's also I've probably been doing this for about 23 years now, and the beginning of my career was during a hinge period between, sort of the really, really bad age of television, the slightly better age of television, and now the golden age of television. So, I feel like I've experienced the sort of madness, rage, and abuse of a lot of people from a lot of different periods of this medium's history. So, in addition to being able to be in charge, to call the shots, to have your vision be seen, one of the things that I'm proudest of about my tenure as a showrunner is that I was able to take a small group of people, and they've sort of learned to do I can actually say that they learned to do that job from me. And so I see them now go into the world, and one of them just had a show premiere here. Another one is a co-executive producer on a top 10 show, and I look at them almost the way that one would with their kids. And for me, my personal idol of showrunning is a man named Michael Piller, who showran Star Trek: The Next Generation. And the best thing about Star Trek: The Next Generation for me isn't just the cultural impact of that show, how amazing it was, how many people it influenced, but that literally the Michael Piller way of running a show put a good 6 to 10 top-grade showrunners in drama television on the air today. And I think that that's the legacy that you want to leave behind, is you want to also have a group of people who are going to show up at your funeral and say, that guy was the coach in my coaching tree, and look at all the people that I trained to be great.
So Danielle and Tracey, feel free to carry on with the up with people portion of this question. That being said, if you would also like to represent the why this job will kill you in your sleep and drive you to the depths of insanity, please feel free to make that shift as well.
I don't know why Greg Garcia didn't say what Javier just said about people who he trained who succeeded. I don't understand why that's not, how is that not the greatest part?
Because my dream is to go to your funerals and be able to say that. I don't want you at mine.
You're like Highlander with a laugh track.
That's never going to happen. I'll say what I love. I mean, it is very hard, but I'll echoing what people said, you start as a staff writer and you go, I want to be a showrunner someday, and then all of a sudden you're a showrunner, and you're like, oh shit, I'm a showrunner. But I like the personal challenge of it. I mean, there are times I've never had this experience in work, and I've certainly worked on hard shows and done difficult things in my life, but there's never been a time where, I mean, maybe daily, where I go, oh my God, I might not be able to get this done, or I don't know if I can figure this out, or TV is a moving train, and so there's only so much time to get it done, and then it gets shot, and then it goes on, it goes on the air, and there's something very gratifying about just making it, and you don't always make it, and that's why some episodes are good and some episodes are bad, but when you do that personal challenge of, can I get it done, can I tell a good story, can I get it shot, can I get it on the air, and then you do it, it's an amazing feeling. So I really like that about it.
And you're also, another thing I kind of learned last year is, like, when you're in charge, you're sort of responsible for the tone in the room, in a way that, like, when you're like, even when you're an upper level writer in a writer's room, like, it's very easy to kind of be like, well, this episode stinks, or like, those notes were bad, like, we're never gonna get this done tonight, or whatever. And I learned very quickly that, like, you can't, when you have that attitude as a showrunner, it's like really bad. Like, you can't be like running a rewrite and be like, well, this sucks, because everyone's like, wait, it does? Like, did we make a big mistake? Should we not be working for you? And so it really requires, like, for me, it required a lot of kind of like positivity and maturity in a way that I kind of, and leadership skills and stuff, in a way that I sort of surprised myself, and I think for me personally was like a really good thing. I think my year of running a show and now doing it again this year, like, it's made me a more like mature and positive person, because you recognize you're like responsible for all these people and when they get to leave and go home to their families and how they feel about the work they've done that day.
So there are good things. There are good things. I sort of always say that, like, season 1 is the season that almost kills you, and then season 2 is the season where you try to do everything differently than you did the season 1, so you don't die, and then season 2 almost kills you, and so then season 3 is where you actually realize that it's time to start putting some kind of boundaries in place, so that it doesn't kill you. I'm curious, have you guys individually had that shift where you just laid down a ground rule for yourself in terms of how you could either, live your life or see your family or whatever that was? And at what point do you stop sort of hazing your younger writers and encourage them to set those same boundaries.
What is this season 3 you speak of?
It's so funny. I just finished season 3, and we did short seasons. So it was 6 episodes season 1, 13 season 2, 13 season 3. And I was with you on how you feel about season 1, and I was with you on how you feel about season 2. And then season 3, I was off board with what you said because I didn't figure it out. Because I honestly, just to be completely honest, I couldn't figure out how to do it differently. And I said I was going to, and my husband's here with me because I don't see him. And so we came to Austin together because I think, and I need more years of this. It's been 2 years for me, 3 seasons in 2 years. Maybe my mentor didn't teach me everything he was supposed to. But no, I've been on shows that have great hours, and it's a very interesting situation to run a show that has terrible hours, and people come up to me and say, "Oh, you poor thing, your show has terrible hours." It's like, it's me. I'm creating. I'm doing it. So I think, just to be honest, I think there are times where you don't. I don't know, maybe if there's a season 4, we'll figure out the formula. But, sometimes I think you just make a show a certain way, and then that's how it's made, unfortunately for me.
To me, the biggest challenge of being a showrunner is it's every day is a race against time. Like I've almost never felt that I wish we had more money on a show, but every single day I wish we had another 3 hours, because that's the hardest part. It's a job that could take forever. And so it does become about like making decisions that we're going to skip this today because we're just not going to make our day otherwise. But that's to me the hardest part is that there's never enough time.
I think I learned stuff going from show to show more than season to season. I was doing multicam, and I was in the room the whole time because you can be, and then we would go to stage and do run-throughs and that kind of stuff, so the time was split. And then when we started doing My Name is Earl, I thought maybe I could do that as well, but you're shooting all day long, and I'm a control freak, and if I get into editing and they said the line wrong and they don't have a take that's right, well, then what was the point of doing all the other stuff? So then I started to do this schedule where I would wake up at like 4:30 in the morning, and I would go through the script, and I would do notes all the way through it, and I would never go into the writer's room. I would just hand it to Danielle and the rest of the gang, and they would go through, and they'd have my notes all the way through, and then they'd give me a script that was like 80 pages, because it would have all the joke alternates, and then the next morning I would go through it again and whittle it down and what have you. So I was learning things from time to time, but then when I got back to multicam again, like 10 years later, I was so used to not being in the room that I couldn't be in there anymore. Like I'd have to like just go off and do a scene and then come back and forth. Like for whatever reason, I lost that muscle of working with a group. And then this new show I'm doing, we're screening it at noon if anybody wants to come up the street. I just didn't hire writers because I said, well, I'm not going to do it. I just wrote them because I think that I can't be in a room.
To set that boundary for yourself, I think that at a certain point, and I see a lot of people sort of never get there, but you have to develop an enormous and perhaps completely false sense of confidence about the show and about your role in the show, and that leads to calm and to the ability to juggle everything. And look, there's a story that I heard from one of the directors of the Die Hard movies, who I guess like they were rewriting the script while the movie was being made, and Bruce Willis is a producer in the movie, and they had a 90-minute notes call like in the middle of production with the studio, and Bruce Willis, apparently was in the call because he was a producer, and then he like at the end of the call, Bruce Willis went, "Yeah, that's great. That sounds like a really good movie. Who are you gonna get to play John McClane in that one?" And I think, look, at a certain point, you have, I mean, you're Julie Plec, for God's sake. Like at a certain point, you got to go like, I'm Julie Plec. They're not making the show without me, and and you realize that, and it's almost like that should, for me, what it was when I sold my show and I got my show on the air and I got it made. I'm like, this is a highly idiosyncratic piece of work that they can't make without me. So I'm gonna go about my day and go about my business as I believe is best. And if they have a problem with it, that's that Titanic, then the problem will be theirs. They'll have to find somebody who can write this show, and it won't be me. But at a certain point, you have to let go of the fear that everything's going to fall apart and just be like, I'm here for a reason. Let's just start eating the elephant one bite at a time, and, hopefully if not, they can get somebody else to be John McClane,
So you guys have talked now a couple times just about mentors and allegedly great mentors and raising your children from infancy. So in the context of how much work there is to do and how hard it is to get everything done and how you're sacrificing your entire life moment to moment and your family at home, how do you find or not find time to sort of pick your person and say, hey, let me help you, and why, like what makes them the person that you want?
I guess my mentor was Tina Fey, because I worked on 30 Rock for 6 years, and then she is an executive producer on my show. And because of that, I'll often have to do interviews for like glamour.com about advice that Tina Fey gave me or whatever. And the thing is, like, I think the thing the writers at glamour.com want me to answer is like, so every day Tina would take me into her office for an hour and would tell me like, never cry at work, or women, like women need to do everything men do in high heels, or some weird soundbite or something. But the thing is, like, she never did that. Like, I don't think she ever gave me advice. It's just like, you kind of through osmosis and watching her and seeing her successfully run a show, you just sort of, for me, I just sort of learned that way. And and then when it's time for me to run my show, I kind of realized like, oh, I know a lot about doing this job just from watching her. And you don't have time as a showrunner. Like, I don't have time, There's this stupid reality show called That's So Cosmo, where it's like a woman, where it's like Joanna Coles is running Cosmo magazine, and it's a reality show, and she has a mentee that she always takes into her office and gives advice, and it's like, who is writing the magazine? How do they have time to do this all the time? And it's like you don't have time to have an official mentor. You just like, there's people who help you out.
So when you guys talk about Greg, like what did he do that made you feel like you were protected by him?
What he really did, and he is a
This
control.
is like my funeral, by the way.
He is a control freak. He's not lying, but he gave me responsibility, is how he mentored me. He did not take me into an office and tell me women need to do what men do in high heels or anything like that. But he just allowed me to do things. And granted, I had to go check with him with everything. But I think that that's part of what, and I'm not sure if your question was about number twos or how do you get the staff, as Javier was saying, is so important. He just allowed me to do things. I think he allowed me to run rooms, which is really the mini version of understanding the majority of what it is to be a showrunner is to take a small room and go run it. And I was a mid-level writer, and Greg was letting me do that because, I don't know, he'd have to tell you why he was letting me do it. But, and that kind of just understanding and being able to, I think that people talk about mentorship kind of dying in the industry. I don't know if it is or it isn't. Certainly, I'm going to do the things that Greg did, which is that kind of stuff, allowing people to go into casting, to run a room, to see editing, because it really just helps your own life. And I think it becomes obvious who the people are who get it and who are willing to help you and who aren't doing, as Tracey was saying, that this sucks and this is so hard and we're not going to be able to do it. The positive kind of forces who are like, we can do this. Give it to me. I'll stay late. I'll come early. I'll help you. Those people on a writing staff save your life. I mean, that's the truth. And I think they make themselves evident. And certainly, I watched Greg, but he just allowed me to do things. And that's it. I'm very grateful for that.
I think it's, when you put a staff together, I feel like when the writers come in the room, there's no more titles as far as I'm concerned. It's all, based on what you're doing in that room. And it's usually pretty easy to see the people that you think can be showrunners at some point and people that aren't ready for that yet. It's the people that come in with solutions. If you have a problem on a Thursday and then Friday you come in, there's people that come in and just kind of sit down and be like, what are we doing today? And then there's people that come in with solutions from what yesterday's problems were, and those are the kinds of people that then you start saying, no matter what their level is, all right, you guys go break a story, you're in charge, and whatever. And, I wouldn't know how to tell somebody to be a showrunner, but I think what Danielle said is, and it's the same thing I did when I was on staff, is you watch people, and I'm sure, Danielle's very nice, and I'm sure she does things that she saw me do, but she also doesn't do things that she saw me do wrong. They keep their eyes open and they see what works and what doesn't work.
And go ahead, Javier.
No, I also think that you have to mentor promiscuously. I mean, you have to really mentor everybody. The philosophy for me is that anybody who's working with me is basically in producer school. on The Middleman, we had a writer's assistant write a script, and I'm like, great, go to casting. And she's like, who's going to take the notes in the room? I'm like, we'll figure it out. Go. And everybody, and of course we assigned a senior level producer to kind of walk through that with that person. But it's like, we are responsible for the management culture of an entire medium. So we are responsible for setting a good example of leadership and of mentorship, and that means that we mentor everybody. That means everybody gets all the same knowledge, everybody gets all the same information. No one is more worthy of a better quality of information than anybody else. You literally give everybody all the tools they need to succeed, and then you see who is taking that opportunity. And look, to the point where Jose Molina, who's a co-executive producer on The Tick this year, and I started a podcast to teach people how to be people and how to work in television and in drama, because...
By the way, go ahead and give a plug, because I think it's the kind of podcast that probably half the people in this room might already listen to, but if not, they might enjoy it.
It's called Children of Tendu. It's a stupid name, I know. All the good, like John August and Craig Mazin took all the good podcast names already, so we don't know. It's called Children of Tendu. It literally walks you from, do I move to LA, to my show's on the air. And it's just sort of our collected wisdom over our 40 years of, all it is an expression of the philosophy that if whatever we know, you should know, because the difference between you and us is as much the knowledge base as it is your creativity. So we just want you to have the same knowledge base, so when you get in there, you can hit the ground running. How are you spelling Tendu? T-E-N-D-E-U. I know it's a dumbass name. There's a song called there's a song called "Counting Blue Cars" by a band called Dishwalla, where the guy says, "We ask many questions like children of Tendu," and Jose thought that was like a race from Star Trek. It's like, who are the children of Tendu? And I'm like, children often. Oh, never mind. So.
I say, I had a writer come into my office at the end of the third year of his contract, and he said, I'm just exhausted and tired, and he's like, and it's hard to rally every day because it's not my show. And I just looked at him, and I with love, because I loved him, I said, but it can be, if you stay and if you double down and if you get into it, it can be. I don't want to be here forever. I want to go on vacation one day. You can have it if you stick with it. And I think that that's an important thing to know is, there is a way to just because you're at an entry level, it can be in success your show in 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So this whole room is probably filled with people who would love to have each and every one of you as a mentor and would love to climb the ranks to be showrunners, and yet everybody has to start somewhere. So given your experience of what got you your first writing job, but not even I'm finally getting paid as a writer. What were the steps of, you landed on the ground in Los Angeles, and what were the sort of 3, 2, 1, or 10 through 0 steps of how you actually found the career that you got to have? And I'll just open that up to anyone who wants to chime in.
I mean, I've always been a nerd, so for me it was school. I knew nothing of Hollywood, and I got my master's in fine arts. MFA is very impressive. People say, what's the F? What's an F? MFA? At UCLA, and that kind of is how I understood what the business was, and I took a sitcom writing class that kind of changed everything for me. So school has always been really important to me, and that is definitely an avenue to get started.
I started as my first job out of college I was a page at David Letterman. So it was just and I got it because my mom's cousin used to work in accounting there or something, and they gave my resume, and it was like a job where you just tell people who are coming to see the show to turn off their cell phones and stuff. But I met an executive producer of the show while I worked there, and he created a show on ABC that I worked as a writer's PA for, and then that show got canceled, and it filmed in the same building as 30 Rock. So when it kind of felt like that show was going off the rails, I went around to the other shows there and handed him my resume. And it was The Sopranos was shooting there, 30 Rock, and Gossip Girl or something. And I got hired as a writer's assistant at 30 Rock, and I did that for 2 years. And while I was a writer's assistant, I just kind of tried to pitch jokes when I could, and like Javi was saying, they let me co-write a script, even though I'd never done that before and didn't know what I was doing, and then they hired me as a writer for season 4, and I stayed there until the end.
I went to college at a little place called Frostburg State University, and by just luck, they taught a sitcom writing class for 1 semester. and I was lucky enough to get picked to come out to L.A. For 2 weeks on a sitcom and just hang out. Because they did something with Warner Brothers this class. It was a show called Room for Two with Linda Lavin and Patricia Heaton. And then I just packed up everything I had and drove out from Virginia and slept on a guy's couch that worked at Foot Locker that I knew from high school. And I started doing, just to make money, I did extra work on Beverly Hills 90210. I went to the prom, I graduated. I protested on City Hall, so Donna Martin graduates. Yes, absolutely, I was chanting. And then I just sent a bunch of resumes around, and I got a job as a writer's PA, just getting lunch and delivering scripts. There was no email, so I was email, driving them around on a show called Step by Step with Patrick Duffy and Suzanne Summers. And then I got into another Warner Brothers workshop that was like a 10-week workshop thing, and then they told me they weren't going to put me on a show, and so I went back and PA'd. I was a little bummed out. But I saw some people going into an office from the workshop, and I just walked in there myself and introduced myself and kind of got an interview by just walking in, and the guy hired me, and that was my first job.
My first job was on a quickly canceled sitcom on a now defunct network called UPN, and it was the either the second or the third comeback vehicle for Andrew Dice Clay. And it was a train wreck, but the lesson for me was always take your first job, no matter what it is, because it got my foot in the door, and I met the executives of Paramount, and they liked me, and they stuck my resume to the people at Frasier, and I got on Frasier's, so that was a pretty big leap from Andrew Dice Clay to Kelsey Grammer. But never would have happened if I hadn't taken that shitty first job.
I always wanted to be a writer, and I basically, even from when I was 7 years old, growing up in Puerto Rico, I tried to find out how George Lucas got to make Star Wars, and I found out he went to USC Film School, and pretty much all I did was try to go to USC Film School for the next 10 years. And then I did go to USC Film School, and then nobody bought my thesis script, which was I wrote in 1993, and it was a $100 million movie that would have starred Raul Julia, so you can see. And then I got an opportunity through the minority office of the school to interview for a job at the NBC network as an executive. And so I became this sort of junior executive, and 2 VPs of drama quit right before I got hired. So somehow I wound up at the age of 23 and 24, being the current executive on Sequest, Earth 2, and Law & Order. And they did have a senior person with me, but it was very odd because and it was Law & Order before there were 5 Law & Orders. Literally I would get angry voicemails from Dick Wolf about the show's promotion, and I'm 23 years old, which is really weird. And they gave me the show Sequest, and for 2 years I was the true believer of Sequest. All I wanted was for Sequest to be great, and I was the only person, including the showrunners of Sequest, who seemed to give a fuck about Sequest. To the point where so when I was at NBC, it's when they invented the thing where they have the third of the screen with the titles on it. They used to have full screen titles, right? So on this side, they were going to have entertainment content, and they said, and the Sequest people kept saying, we're not getting any promotion. The answer was, yeah, because it sucks. But I was like, no, of course you're not, and you deserve promotion. So I took a documentary crew to the set in Orlando. I convinced NBC to give me money so we could make these mini Sequest documentaries that would go on the part of the screen where the credits weren't. And then so I'm there, and I'm making these little documentaries, and the showrunner is walking off the set, because the dolphin won't talk or whatever. And he goes, kid, you drink? I'm like, and I totally didn't at the time. And I'm like, yes, sir, I do. And then he goes, you smoke? And I totally didn't at the time. And I said, yes, sir, I do. And then the next thing you know, I'm drinking and smoking with the showrunner at this bar in an Orlando hotel. And he starts becoming, sort of maudlin and middle-aged. And he says, someday you're going to be president of a network and you won't be hiring me. And I go well, actually, sir, I want to be a writer. And he goes, well, if we get a third season, I'll hire you as a staff writer. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And then then the show, because he didn't think the show was going to get a third season, and then what happened was the show that they developed to take Sequest's position on the schedule was a show about spies who fought crime in monster trucks, like you do, and so they had no choice but to bring Sequest back, and that's how I got my first job.
It's amazing. That is fantastic. All right, shifting gears for a second to some some partnership questions. Just in general, if you could have a producer, director, a good non-writing producer, an adding value non-writing producer, or a co-showrunner, or all of the above, or none of the above, what would you choose?
Co-showrunner. I've never quite understood the non-writing producer, although some of them can be very good. All you need is help in the writer's room, I feel like. That's all. Just give me fucking story ideas. That's all. Like I think that's the most important thing. And it's great to have a great director and a great producer, but all the help you can get in the writer's room, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
And would you want that co-showrunner to also be an extraordinary writer, or would you settle with total mediocrity?
Given the choice, I would choose extraordinary writer, I think. It's not usually that clear cut, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, that to me is the hardest part of the showrunner job is the writing part of the showrunner job, and so that's where I think all the help. I mean, we generate a script a week, which may not sound like a lot with that many people, but when you start hitting around episode 17, 18 in a course of a year, you're just exhausted. So I think that's where I would take all of the help.
Most of my experience has been as a number two. I mean, I'm actually kind of shocked to be in this panel because collectively, I mean, it's the level of success here by far outweighs any that I've had. And frankly, to the point where like my goal has become to be the Joe Biden of television, But what I've noticed, I think the biggest mistake that first-time showrunners make is that they buy a staff instead of casting it. And I think that one of the things is that whether you have a co-showrunner, any number, the biggest thing that you have to look at is how do the personalities that I'm hiring play with each other, from the staff writer to your number two and even to yourself, because as you said, you want the whole package, but sometimes your number two might not be the most dynamic person on the page, but they can run the room and get the story ideas out of the other members of the staff, and they can act as a mentor, they can do any number of things. So I think more than anything else, it's when I don't think that there's an archetypal thing of who is the perfect person to help you with the job. I think when you get a show, you look at the show and you say, here's what I need out of the show, here's the work we have ahead of us, what is the best combination of people so that if, say, my number two isn't a great rewriter, but he or she is a great room runner, then who's the supervising producer, da-da-da. And I think you sort of work it that way so that you don't have to rely on any one piece of the machine to do all of the work of the machine.
Nice. I do drama, I don't do comedy, and so I live in a permanent existential crisis about actors and what I should let them do to the script versus just being like, just fucking say every word the way it's written, and please. Most of you guys work in comedy where it's entirely possible that the success and the voice of your show is equal parts yours and your front man, So my question is, what in your current situations, you guys, and please feel free to do the show plugs, because I know two of you have actually shows launching soon. What relationship do you like to cultivate with your leads, and what is that battle or hell like, or is it beautiful and collaborative?
My first showrunning job was I took over the last 2 seasons of Desperate Housewives, so that was a very interesting. I literally, on my first month, had an actress come to me and say that the other actress refused to look at her in the eye while she was doing her scenes, and I had to go yell at her. But that made me realize the importance of very early on, like day one, establishing a relationship with your cast, and I've never been someone who's been best friends with the cast, but you want them to feel heard, you want them to feel included, let them, if you have a problem with a line, come talk to us. I think establishing that kind of collaborative, relationship with your cast is probably, after the writing, the most crucial thing you can do as a showrunner.
I have a unique situation that kind of combines your last two questions, because I did not create the show I run. Gerard Carmichael, who's a young stand-up, created the Carmichael Show. It is on TV right now, speaking of plugs. It's on NBC right now, and it's on Netflix and Hulu. But so that sometimes is a situation where he's a star co-creator, and I think that you could do a whole panel. You could do 12 panels on that. I think comedy especially, but I think all of TV is collaborative. And if you are not willing to work in a collaborative environment, TV is going to be very difficult for you. It may not be impossible, I don't know, but you have to figure out how to find the common ground in every situation, especially in my case where the guy who's going to be in front of the camera is in the room. I think my job, what I kind of messed up in season 1 and learned quickly I needed to fix was I can't affect, so there's writer Gerard, there's actor Gerard, there's real life Gerard, there's pretend, there's TV Gerard, but I can't harm the actor who's gonna go in front of the camera, because if I do that, then I've ruined everything. Because we could have a perfect script, but if the actors aren't gonna be their best in front of the camera, then you've screwed up. Then you're not going to get your best. So that was something that I had to learn, that balance can be so delicate that you can actually hurt your show, because actors are sensitive. They're different creatures than writers. We're sensitive too, but it's a whole different ballgame, I think, with actors, and you can push too hard and accidentally make it bad. And I think it's a really tough balance that it is highly important to get that right.
Actors have it tough too, because it's them out there. They're out there, and you can write a show, and then if it doesn't work, you just sneak around to the next one, and it's their face, on top of this thing. And so I think it's important to gain trust early on, for that relationship, so that when you are talking to them and explaining something, that they trust you. My new show is called The Guest Book, and 90% of it every week is a different cast and a different story. So you're kind of under the gun very quickly. You only have a few days with these people, and so you want to try to get that trust right off the bat, and establish a relationship as soon as you can. So I'm very aware of that. Some people come in and do it, and they're old friends, and that's why they're doing it, and so it's already there. But
do you do a lot of improv, or is it really
no
specifically
improv?
scripted?
I've never really done that on my shows. People have been pretty just trusting in the script, and we do work hard on the scripts for a reason, so they're that way. If somebody has an idea, I'll listen to it. If I don't agree with it, I might say, if it's great, I go, great, let's just do that. If I don't agree with it, usually I'll go, okay, well, let's get it this way, and then let's do one like that, and what have you. But for the most part, no, there's no improv.
There's nothing I hate and despise more than improv. I loathe it, and on my show, I just sat everybody down and I said, this is a word-perfect show. You have the freedom, and it is your job to interpret these characters, to bring them to life, to figure out how they walk, how they talk, and all of that, but the lines are sacred. And my door is open. If there's a problem with a line, you can call me anytime up until the day of shooting. And that boundary stuck. And the thing I hate about improv isn't that, is that actually some are good at it and some aren't, but then if you encourage the person who's good at it to do it, then the next person who's going to want to do improv is the worst at it like literally the person who can barely get a word out is going to be like, oh, I have an improv idea, and then the next thing you know, you're just, so I think that with the actors and pretty much with everyone in your life, it's not about being a dick about it, it's about setting a boundary where you say, this is the boundary that defines your job from my job. So you do your part of the job, I'll do my part of the job. And if you can't see that as sort of a necessary thing to do 22 hours of television for $100 million of somebody else's money, then perhaps you should not take this job.
Oh, if only.
And the thing, in comedy, like, I've come from 2 different shows before creating Great News that had very different philosophies on improv. And on 30 Rock, it was word perfect. And even though, Tina and Alec were amazing improvisers, no one improvised because they really trusted the writing so much. And then I was a co-EP on the Mindy project, and that was a lot more loose. And I will say, like, the thing is, in comedy, when it's controlled, like, you can sometimes find things on the floor that you can't find in the room, and it's like the most craftily written joke to blow a scene may just not be as good as, like, Mindy just, like, putting her foot in the toilet or something, like, that might just be funnier. And so if it's like, if everyone trusts each other, and so on our show we don't improvise, but we'll always do like a pass where if John Michael Higgins is like, I have one, it's like, let him do the thing he has. It's usually pretty good.
Show plug.
Oh, my show's Great News. It aired on NBC this. Thank you, my one fan. It aired on NBC this past season, and we're coming back for season 2. They aired them like all basically on the same day. So if you haven't seen it, please catch up. It's on Hulu and on NBC.com and on iTunes. Thanks.
By the way, I should mention, Javi, I just found out last night that you wrote like a 25-page manifesto.
Yes.
Like,
I believe
is there a link to it?
Yes. If you go to my website, it's OKBJGM. A couple things. OKBJGM. OKB, the Russian initials for Experimental Design Bureau, JGM.
Of Tendu.
Yes.
Yeah.
My brand is Curated Obscurity. And not only is it's called the 11 Laws of Showrunning, and mostly it's gleaned from my experience of 23 years of madness, rage, and abuse that has been wreaked upon me. Although every showrunner I've ever worked with thinks it's about them, which is hilarious and tells you a lot about showrunners. And the other thing that's on that website is every pitch, Bible, script for pilots that I have sold in my career. Not all of them, like the Xena pilot's not still there because NBC would probably get very mad at me if I leaked it because I had to quit and I didn't make it and that was the whole thing. But so literally if you, look, I don't think I'm special. I don't think I have the secret sauce. I don't think I do it better than anybody. But if you want to see how I've managed to cobble the semi-appearance of success with which I've landed on this couch among people who are vastly more qualified to speak out on this, go to my website, download the stuff, look at it, and that's how I did what I did. And if that helps you, I hope it does.
So before we open it up to the floor, Javi and I were on a panel on Friday that was called TV in a Trumped Up America. And it was such a fascinating conversation that I thought I would sort of circle it back to the end of this panel because, not making any presumptions about anybody's politics in this room and on this stage, what was most interesting is a comment that Beau Willimon made, which is like, regardless of where you stand in the political spectrum, the country got hit in the face with a 2x4 on election day. Some happy, some sad, but what it did was it created a sort of a cultural schism that will take us decades to recover from. And the question that frames around that is, how do you guys as creators, as writers, as showrunners today feel like, have you sort of woken up and said, oh, I need to write everything differently? Have you sort of retreated and said, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the status quo? Is there anything that has impacted you directly that you want to talk about?
Well, my show takes place at a cable news show, which when I pitched it in 2016 seemed like just a fun workplace environment. And and also kind of the landscape I was pitching it in was very different. Like in the pilot, which was shot 2 years ago, it was kind of like the jokes you were making about cable news were kind of, CNN's been talking about the Malaysian plane crash for 3 weeks with no new information, and Don Lemon is interviewing a llama live on TV. Like it was more a joke about like how it's all become fluff, and now it's just completely different, And so we shot the whole first season before the election, and I think we had like 2 jokes about how Hillary Clinton's our new president, which, we just had to change. But we've only been back in the writer's room for season 2 for 1 week. But a lot of our conversations have been about, without making, and I don't want to make Donald Trump jokes. Like there's a million places that you can go to hear funnier, more current Donald Trump jokes that weren't thought up in a writer's room 2 months prior. But what are the ways that we can talk about the state of cable news right now and tell stories that have some sort of hopefully clever comment on that and the way people view news and why cable news is such a place people go to unleash their rage right now, and hopefully that is something we can tackle in our second season.
Yeah, and I was on with Bob. We're on the socially the social relevance
Socially
in
conscious
sitcoms. Socially conscious sitcoms. So the Carmichael Show does talk about socially relevant, and some of you might have been there. I don't want to repeat myself, but our season 2 finale was about Trump, so that aired a summer ago, and was about the election, and that was the primaries, and so it was interesting that we called it. No, we didn't call it, but there are just, I'll give you a funny example of, so this season we had it aired already. It was the second in our premiere because NBC likes to just air them all together, like Tracey said. But it was called Support the Troops. And the fact that Trump was president was relevant to the story. I don't think that we went at it because he was, because I think whoever the president would have been relevant to the story. But we had a joke where there was a picture of Trump. And as we were shooting that, he was already the president, obviously. But it kind of felt, it was a little bit more like, could he be impeached at that point? And it was like, I don't know, we're kind of living in this world where could he, couldn't. And we shoot kind of of far out because we were a summer show. And so we were going to swap out the pictures and do a joke of Pence. So we had Trump, and then we were going to do Pence, and then we were going to do Bannon just in case because we weren't exactly sure what was happening. And then we ended up just leaving it Trump because it's kind of like, well, how can you, it's hard to kind of say up to that. And so we just aired it early just in case he gets impeached. We wanted to make sure that it aired in time. So, you do get affected even in funny ways by that.
That is fantastic. And I'm told that it is now time to open the floor for questions, during which any point a question is directed anywhere near you, Bob. I think you need a show plug.
I do need a show plug,
Yeah.
yes.
Feel free to give it now while
okay.
we line up.
Superior Donuts, 9:30, 8:30 Central, Monday night, CBS. How's that?
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Hey, questions start with who, what, when, and how. They don't start with I.
This man has been to a lot of cons.
How has all your jobs changed in the age now of showrunners as personalities? Like EMOS has been making videos with all these showrunners as stars. How's your job changed in this age?
I get to come to cool stuff like this. That I don't know. That didn't used to happen before. I mean, this is fun.
I've been a showrunner for like 2 minutes, so I don't know. This has always been my experience.
I had no idea we were stars.
I think you have a no. Please go ahead. You have a bigger conversation with your audience. They want to hear from you, and you talk to them on social media, and it's great. And then that's what you do.
Yeah. In the red.
How do you deal with, this is something I talked with a friend about. He was a showrunner, and you hit that peak, you want to reach the showrunning peak. You hit Mount Everest. What happens, you said, well, I haven't gotten 3 shows or 3 seasons. What happens when you are canceled in 20 years? And you're looking for other opportunities. How do you get back in the door as say, well, we don't want to hire you. You were a showrunner. Yeah, but I can write. Can you address that?
I've been a number 2 more than I've been a showrunner, and I haven't been a showrunner for a little while. I mean, right now, the hierarchies are so weird that like on the honestly, look, as writers, as people who do what we do, what we were taught from an early age is you write your way out of any bad situation. Your show got canceled, you write another one. Your episode didn't turn out well, you write another one. You got a divorce, you write a script. You stub your toe, you write a script is the answer to everything. So I mean, look, we lead these Samuel Beckett lives. I mean, it's not. The formula for our success is not, for some of these people, it's Titanic inspiration and natural gifts, but for most of us, it's just like literally, hey, here's a thing I did. That thing ended. I'm going to do another thing. And then you just keep going till you die. That's it. There's no secret sauce. You just keep writing.
Absolutely.
I also think anybody would love to hire somebody that's been a showrunner as their number 2 because they get it. And then anybody that's been a showrunner, a lot of them would love to take the job as the number 2 because you get to sit there and look at the showrunner, and like on My Name is Earl, there was a very talented showrunner named Victor Fresco that does the show Santa Clarita Diet, and he was a consultant on My Name is Earl, and that guy's never been happier. I mean,
And he was so nice, and now he's running a show again, and he's like so stressed. And Victor's the most easygoing guy. He's like, whoa, no, he's not. He was just a consultant on My Name.
yeah, like Victor on My Name is Earl, Victor would come in the morning and have cereal every day, and he had a bowl, and he named his bowl Bowly. I guarantee you, while he's running a show, he does not have a name for his bowl.
Go ahead, sir, in the front.
In the room, when does the love of comedy, does it go too far? When do you have to reel it in?
1,000 times a day. It goes too far, but I think that's part of the license of just people feeling free to say things. And then, thankfully, there's a lot of time between then and air date and filming to cooler heads can prevail.
Yeah, the first few jokes, aren't going to be able to go in the script. I started off in like Miller Boyette shows with Family Matters and that kind of stuff, and you'd hear like filthy things in the room, and then you'd be like, all right, let's get what we can do. And then I went to work on Family Guy, and people were throwing things out there, and I was like, haha, yeah, and then I'm like, oh shit, they're putting that in. Oh my God.
This was kind of an extension of the question that you asked about the non-writing, which the non-writing producer as like a
Yeah, there definitely is. There's a very talented person that runs my production company that's sitting in the back, Alex Jaffe, and she's an executive producer on the show that I'm doing right now. And she was a development or a current executive at CBS. That's how I knew her. And she would always give us great notes. And then when it was time to do a production company, I hired her to run it. And there's a lot of like Bob said, there's a lot of like non-writing producers that it's just like, why are they here? It's just like an anchor and they're just taking up money. But a good one gives you great notes and also has the freedom of not thinking like exactly like a writer might be like, I don't want to write that, or or a producer director might, it's going to be too hard to shoot, but they can come to it with a perspective of just like what they think will be good, and then it's the other people's job to figure it out. But there's definitely a path to do that. I mean, sometimes it's weird. Sometimes they come as agents, and then they become that. It's all different ways.
Yeah, Alex is great, and because she's also finding ideas, and like that can be very valuable. People who are like generating ideas for series and there from the beginning. The trouble is when it's like the star's manager, that kind of that. Yeah.
I always say, and when I give this advice, I say, if you control the content, you have a job that they can't kick you out of. They can kick you out of the room, but they still have to pay you. So if you have a short story that you have optioned, a book from years ago that you optioned, and anything where you are selling something tangible, especially in this day of an age of IP whores, meaning intellectual property, and the studios don't like to make anything original because they can't really believe in original things, so they just buy things that have already been written. Anyway, whoa, I got deep. I would love to keep talking, but I've been getting this for about 3 minutes. So you guys, thank you. Great
Thank you
great
so
group
much.
here. Thanks for the chat. Thanks to all of you.